In 1993, a small robot was sent into a narrow shaft inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. The shaft was approximately 20 centimeters square, too small for a human to enter. It had been known about for over a century, discovered by a British engineer named Wayneman Dixon in 1872, but never explored beyond its opening. No one knew where it went. No one knew what was at the end. The robot, a custom-built device called Upuaut 2, designed by a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink, climbed the shaft for 65 meters, ascending at an angle through the limestone core of the pyramid. And then it stopped. Not because the shaft ended, because there was a door. A stone slab, fitted into the shaft with precision, with two small copper fittings attached to its face. Handles. A door with handles, sealed inside a shaft that no human had entered, in a pyramid that had been studied by the most advanced civilizations in the world for over 1,000 years. Nobody knew it was there. Nobody knew what was behind it. Rudolf Gantenbrink reported his discovery. He sent the footage to the Egyptian Antiquities authorities. He waited for the next step, for permission to continue, to send a smaller camera through the gap beneath the door, to find out what lay beyond. He waited 9 years. In 2002, a new robot was finally sent into the shaft. It drilled a small hole through the stone door. A camera was threaded through the hole, and on the other side of the door that had been sealed for 4,500 years was another door. That second door has never been opened. It is still there today. Sealed. Inside a shaft, inside a pyramid that the entire world has been studying for centuries. And nobody, officially, knows what is behind it. The Queen's Chamber sits at the geometric center of the Great Pyramid's base, on the horizontal axis of the pyramid's north-south center line. It was not the first chamber discovered inside the pyramid. Arab explorers who entered the monument in the 9th century found the king's chamber above it, and apparently missed the Queen's chamber entirely. It was sealed behind a limestone plug in the floor of the horizontal passage leading to it, invisible to anyone who didn't know to look. The chamber wasn't officially discovered until the 19th century, when explorers noticed the plug and removed it. The name Queen's Chamber is a misnomer. It was given by Arab scholars who assumed, based on the chamber's vaulted ceiling, that it was intended for a female burial. In ancient Egyptian tradition, female tombs had vaulted ceilings, while male tombs had flat ones. The assumption was wrong. There was no evidence the chamber was ever intended for a queen, or for any burial at all. The name stuck because names always do, even when they're wrong. The chamber measures approximately 5.5 meters by 5 meters, with a pointed limestone ceiling that rises to just under 6 meters at its apex. In the eastern wall, there is a niche, a corbelled recess approximately 5 meters high and just over a meter deep, whose original purpose has never been determined. Some researchers have proposed it once held a statue. Others have suggested it was an architectural feature related to the chamber's acoustic properties. No one has proven either explanation. The walls of the chamber, when first explored, were found to be coated with a layer of salt. The salt was not a natural deposit. It had crystallized out of the limestone under conditions that suggested a chemical process had occurred inside the chamber. Later, analysis found traces of 2 specific compounds on the walls, compounds that, when combined, react to produce hydrochloric acid and a significant quantity of heat. The Queen's chamber, in other words, showed signs of having been used as a chemical reactor. This is not a fringe interpretation. It is a documented physical fact about the state of the chamber when first studied. The explanation for it has never been officially settled. But the shafts are what matter most. And the door that has not been opened. Dixon's discovery of the shafts in 1872 was accidental. Wayneman Dixon, a British engineer working in Egypt, noticed a crack in the southern wall of the Queen's chamber and pushed a wire through it. The wire went further than it should have, further than the thickness of the wall would explain. Something was hollow on the other side. Dixon and his team began to investigate, and within the walls of the Queen's chamber, they found two narrow shafts, one in the northern wall, one in the southern wall, running at angles into the body of the pyramid. The shafts were approximately 20 centimeters square, precisely cut, running at angles of approximately 39 degrees. Clearly not natural formations, clearly built by the pyramid's architects as part of the original construction. But unlike the shafts in the king's chamber above, which exit the pyramid on its north and south faces and have been known about since antiquity, the Queen's chamber shafts did not exit the pyramid. They ended somewhere inside it, their terminations unknown, their purpose unexplained. Dixon found 3 objects inside the shafts when he explored them: a small bronze hook, a piece of cedar wood, and a granite ball. These are now known as the Dixon relics. The cedar wood was carbon dated in the late 20th century and found to be of a species consistent with Old Kingdom Egypt. The granite ball and the bronze hook were analyzed and found to be similarly ancient. What they were doing inside a sealed shaft inside a pyramid, what function they served, what purpose the shafts themselves served, has never been explained. The shafts were known about after 1872. They were narrow. They were apparently sealed at their far ends, and for over a century, they were left unexplored, until Rudolf Gantenbrink built a robot small enough to enter them. Upuaut, too, the name means opener of the ways in ancient Egyptian, the name of the jackal god who guided the dead through the underworld, entered the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber on March 22, 1993. The footage it sent back was the first view ever recorded of the interior of that shaft. Smooth limestone walls, precisely cut, ascending at a steady angle. The shaft was clean, no debris, no collapse, no sign of any intrusion since the pyramid was built. It had been sealed and left untouched for 4,500 years. At 65 meters from the entrance, Upuaut, too, reached the end of what it could traverse. In front of it was a stone slab, fitting the shaft precisely, with 2 small copper fittings set into its face. The fittings were loops, handles, the kind of hardware attached to a door that is meant to be opened. Gantenbrink sent the footage to the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities and to the German Archaeological Institute in Cairo. He announced the discovery publicly. It generated enormous media attention. A sealed door inside a sealed shaft inside the world's most studied monument was exactly the kind of discovery that the public understood immediately. The Egyptian authorities initially disputed the significance of the find. Zahi Hawass, who was at that time working his way toward control of Egyptian antiquities, publicly minimized the discovery and suggested Gantenbrink had violated his permit by releasing the footage without authorization. Gantenbrink was subsequently denied further access to the pyramid. His robot sat at the entrance to the shaft for 9 years. The door remained closed. In 2002, a new expedition was organized, this time under the auspices of the Egyptian authorities themselves, in partnership with National Geographic, whose cameras would broadcast the exploration live to a global television audience. A new robot, equipped with a drill, was sent up the southern shaft. It reached the stone door. It drilled a small hole through it, roughly 3 centimeters in diameter, and threaded a miniature camera through the hole. The camera revealed what was on the other side, a small space, perhaps 20 centimeters deep, and at the far end of the space, another stone slab, a second door. Behind the first sealed door, there was a second sealed door. The live television broadcast reached an estimated 30 million viewers worldwide. The discovery of a second door was announced to the global audience in real time. And then the program ended. The broadcast moved on. The cameras were withdrawn. The robot was removed from the shaft. The second door was not drilled. The space between the 2 doors was not further examined. The justification offered was that further exploration required planning, equipment, and permissions that were not yet in place. That was 2002. As of today, the second door in the southern shaft of the Queen's Chamber has not been officially opened. 20+ years. A door that the entire world watched being discovered on live television. Still sealed. Let us be precise about what we know and what we don't. We know the southern shaft of the Queen's Chamber was constructed as part of the original pyramid and runs for at least 65 meters through its limestone core. We know there is a stone slab at the end of the accessible section, fitted with copper handles. We know that behind that slab, there is a small space, and behind that space, there is a second stone slab. We know none of this was known about before 1993. We know the second slab has not been officially penetrated or examined. We do not know what is behind the second door. We do not know whether the shaft continues beyond the second door or terminates there. We do not know what the copper handles on the first door were for, whether they were functional hardware for a door meant to be opened or symbolic objects whose meaning is now lost. We do not know why the shafts exist. The conventional explanation that they were ventilation shafts, providing air circulation for workers constructing the chamber, fails because the shafts don't connect to the exterior of the pyramid. Air cannot flow through a sealed passage. A second explanation holds that the shafts were symbolic, aligned to specific stars so that the soul of the dead could travel through them to the afterlife. This explanation is more widely accepted, and there is astronomical evidence that the shafts do align to significant stars at specific historical dates. But symbolic shafts intended for a soul's journey do not typically end in doors with copper handles. Doors with handles are made to be opened by someone, from one side or the other. The northern shaft of the Queen's Chamber was explored by a different robot in 2002, and later, in more detail, by a robot called Djedi in 2011. The Djedi robot, equipped with a camera that could bend around corners, examined the underside of the door at the end of the northern shaft and found markings, red ochre marks that appeared to be hieroglyphs or symbols left by the pyramid's builders. The symbols were photographed, they were not fully translated. The Djedi team released some of their findings in 2011, and then the research went quiet. The northern shaft also has a door. The northern shaft's door also has what appear to be copper fittings. And the northern shaft's door has also not been officially opened. 2 shafts, 2 doors, 2 sets of copper fittings, and behind them, 2 spaces whose contents, if any, remain unknown. The most studied monument in human history, the most sophisticated scanning technology in the world. 23 years since the second door was discovered on live television in front of 30 million people, and the doors remain sealed. Why? The official answer has shifted over the years. Initially, further exploration required better equipment. Then it required permits. Then it required coordination between multiple international institutions. Then it required a plan for what to do with whatever was found, to ensure proper preservation and documentation. Each justification is individually plausible. Collectively, they amount to over 2 decades of reasons not to open a door that the entire world is waiting to see opened. There is a version of this story where the delays are purely bureaucratic, the grinding, frustrating slowness of institutional archaeology in a politically sensitive environment. Egypt's Antiquities Administration has priorities: tourism revenue, international relations, the management of a heritage infrastructure that spans thousands of sites across thousands of years of history. A small door in a narrow shaft, however fascinating, is not always the most urgent item on that list. But there is another version, in which the people who control access to the Queen's chamber shafts have some reason to believe that opening the second door will produce a discovery that cannot be quietly managed, that cannot be announced in a measured press release and absorbed into the existing narrative of the Great Pyramid as a royal tomb. That will require, instead, a complete reconsideration of what the pyramid was built for, who built it, and what they left inside. In which case, the 20-year delay is not bureaucratic inertia. It is preparation. Or it is the absence of preparation, the unwillingness to open a door until you know what you are going to say when you see what is on the other side. In the full arc of this series, the Queen's Chamber's sealed door is perhaps the most precise crystallization of the pattern we have been following. In Ethiopia, the door of the chapel has been sealed for 3,000 years, and the institutional will to open it has never emerged. In Jerusalem, the tunnels beneath the Temple Mount have been sealed by politics and religion, and the weight of consequences too large to manage. In the Great Pyramid, a void 30 meters long has been confirmed by peer-reviewed science and left uninvestigated for 7 years. Beneath the Sphinx, underground chambers confirmed by multiple independent surveys have not been officially entered. And in the Queen's Chamber, a door discovered in 1993, examined on live television in 2002, confirmed to conceal a second sealed door behind it, has not been opened in over 2 decades. Each sealed door in this series has its own explanation for remaining closed, and each explanation, examined carefully, turns out to be insufficient. The technology exists, the location is known, the discovery has been publicly announced. The door is not open. 65 meters inside a narrow shaft, in a chamber that should never have existed in a pyramid that was supposedly a simple tomb, behind a stone slab fitted with copper handles, that were placed there 4,500 years ago by people who clearly intended the door to be opened someday. Something waits. We drilled a hole in the door. We looked through it. We saw another door. And then we walked away. That is where the story currently stands. The second door of the Queen's chamber shaft is sealed. It has been sealed since the pyramid was built. And the question of what is behind it, a question that 30 million people watched being raised on live television more than 20 years ago, remains today unanswered. The door is still there. The handles are still attached. And whatever the builders of the Great Pyramid placed on the other side of that door, whatever they considered important enough to seal behind not one, but 2 stone slabs, deep inside a shaft, inside the most carefully engineered structure in human history, is still waiting, in the dark, to be found. There is one detail about the Queen's chamber that this series has not yet addressed, and it connects everything. The shafts of the Queen's chamber were studied astronomically by researchers, including Kate Spence and Robert Bauval. The southern shaft, when traced to its angle and orientation, aligns to the star Sirius as it appeared in the sky around 2450 BC, the brightest star in the night sky, associated in ancient Egyptian religion with the goddess Isis and with the annual flooding of the Nile. The northern shaft aligns to the star Kochab, part of the constellation Ursa Minor, which in the same period circled the celestial North Pole without setting, an eternal, unmoving star, associated in Egyptian astronomy with the pharaoh's journey to immortality. The shafts, in other words, were not ventilation systems and not structural features. They were telescopes, pointed at specific stars, aligned with a precision that required sophisticated astronomical knowledge, built into a chamber that sits at the geometric center of the pyramid's base, at a position that is not accidental and is not incidental. The Queen's chamber is at the center. The shafts point to the stars, and at the end of the shafts, 2 doors with copper handles, sealed for 4,500 years. If the shafts were built to connect the interior of the pyramid to specific points in the sky, if the copper-handled doors were built to be opened at specific astronomical moments, when the alignment of the shafts with their target stars was at its most precise, then the question of what is behind the second door may not be separable from the question of when to open it. Maybe the builders were not simply hiding something. Maybe they were timing something. Maybe the door was meant to be opened not by whoever happened to build a robot small enough to enter the shaft, but by whoever understood why the shaft was pointed at Sirius, by whoever could read the astronomical message encoded in the chamber's geometry and know that they had arrived at the right moment, by whoever was ready. This series began with a locked door in Ethiopia. It ends, for now, with a locked door inside a pyramid. Both doors have been known about for decades. Both have institutional guardians who control access. Both conceal something that the world is waiting to see. The difference is this. The chapel in Ethiopia is guarded by a tradition that has been unbroken for 3,000 years, by a man who has given his life to standing between the world and what he guards. The door in the Queen's chamber shaft is guarded by paperwork, by permits and plans and institutional coordination, and the quiet accumulation of reasons not to act. One door is sealed by faith. The other is sealed by bureaucracy, and in some ways, the bureaucratic door is the more disturbing of the two. Because faith, at least, is a reason. Bureaucracy is just delay. And whatever is behind the second door of the Queen's chamber shaft, whatever the builders of the Great Pyramid sealed there with copper handles and stone slabs and 4,500 years of silence, does not deserve to wait for paperwork. It deserves to be found. The robot has already been built. The hole has already been drilled. The first door has already been opened. All that remains is the second. And the question that this series has been asking from its very first video, the question that follows every sealed door, every sealed chamber, every sealed tunnel and locked chapel and forbidden excavation site. What is on the other side? The door is there. The handles are there. The answer is there. We just have to open it.